everyone, welcome to the 5 Beer Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an everyman's ale trail. In this episode, I salute our veterans, turn up the heat on my homebrew project, hedge my bets with Jeff from Loaded Dice Brewery, and review a non-alcoholic option from Industrial Arts Brewing. But before we get this party started, here is this episode's burning question. What is your favorite non-alcoholic or near beer? Every year, I try to find a few new ones to try during my break from real beer each spring and fall. Back in Season 1, I devoted an entire segment to this style of beer. At that time, I had just discovered the top-notch non-alcoholic beers that Untitled Art out of Wisconsin brews. But probably my favorite one to date has been Parallel Raspberry Passion Fruit Sour from Southern Grist Brewing in Nashville, Tennessee. I indicated in my check-in on Untappd that it had a great big raspberry aroma with a sweet fruit flavor and a tart hit on the tongue with a pleasant sour finish. This episode, I want to recognize our United States veterans. The website for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs gives this brief history of Veterans Day. World War I, known at the time as the Great War, officially ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919 in the Palace of Versailles outside the town of Versailles, France. However, fighting ceased 7 months earlier when an armistice, or temporary cessation of hostilities between the Allied nations and Germany, went into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. For that reason, November 11, 1918 is generally regarded as the end of the war to end all wars. Veterans Day continues to be observed on November 11th, regardless of what day of the week on which it falls. The restoration of the observance of Veterans Day to November 11th not only preserves the historical significance of the date, but helps focus attention on the important purpose of Veterans Day, a celebration to honor America's veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. So unlike Memorial Day, which honors the fallen, Veterans Day honors both past and present, the living and the dead. It is a federal holiday, so you'll find a number of businesses closed in recognition of this day. You should fly your American flag at full staff, since this is a day of celebration and honor, not one of mourning. So today, I want to honor each and every one of you that have served. If you are a veteran, please reach out to me via Instagram, Spotify, or email and tell me a little bit about your story. I would also like to send you some swag courtesy of the podcast. If you are wondering, there are a number of veteran-owned breweries here in Ohio that are part of the Ohio Craft Brewers Association. Black Frog Brewery, Dalton Union Winery and Brewery, Hoppy Dude Brews, March 1st Brewing, Marion Brewing, Missing Falls Brewery, Paradigm Shift Brewery, Squids Brewery, and the Urban Woody Brewery. So if you live in Ohio or live in a neighboring state near any one of these breweries, be sure to drop in and support these folks who serve their country and are now serving their community some darn fine craft beer. And a special shout out to last month's featured interview with Charlie Foxtrot Brewing, who is doing some amazing things in the Port Charlotte, Florida community. Keep up the good work there, Nicholas. And if you find yourself on the Gulf side of Florida, be sure to stop in, support this tap room, and let them know the Everyman sent you. I'm also going to make a Google spreadsheet with veteran-owned breweries that I will try to keep up to date. I will add the link in a post on my Instagram account honoring veterans. I've done a lot of research for this segment of the craft beer community, so if there is a craft brewery that I'm missing that is veteran-owned, please let me know so that I can update it. In this segment of Homebrew Hijinks, it's time to get fired up with a Northern Border Porter. While the grain was steeping, I heated up my sparge water into 2 smaller stock pots. It's always a delicate dance to get up to temperature at the same time that the mash is completed. My target temperature was 170 degrees Fahrenheit. I removed the stock pot from the oven, removed the lid, and lifted the brew bag out and began to let it drain in my colander accessory. I shifted it around a few times before I began pouring the sparge water 2 cups at a time over the grain bag as kind of a fly sparge. I let the liquid drain out a little bit, and then began giving the bag a good squeeze each time in order to get as much of the sugars out of the grain. I will say that I have to get some high temperature gloves at some point because the grain is hot. I achieved my pre-boil volume of nearly 1 3/4 gallons after the sparge. The wort was a lovely shade of chocolate brown. As I waited for the wort to get up to a boil, I began to measure out my hops. For this recipe, I would use equal parts of Mount Hood, Willamette, and Nugget hops. The hop schedule called for additions at 60 minutes, 10 minutes, and at flame out. Each hop would use a total of 4.5 grams during the boil, so I placed 1.5 grams of each hop into 3 different bowls in preparation. As soon as the wort began to boil with my hop basket, I added the first hop combination and set my timer. Now things were beginning to heat up. Once the boil was completed, I pulled out 2/3 cup of the wort and let it cool slightly before pouring it into my measuring vial. I used my hydrometer to take a specific gravity reading. Even with the temperature adjustment, the original gravity came out to only be 1060, which was about 15 points less than the estimated value. That means that my ABV is going to be a little bit less than I was hoping for. Well, something else to figure out for the next brew session. Next episode, it's time to pitch the yeast. Now, it's time for Barstool Banter. This episode, I ante up with Jeff Smith from Loaded Dice Brewery in Troy, Michigan. We start up the first half of the interview talking about the brewery, how he got into brewing, and how his ale trail journey brought him to the greater Detroit area. Welcome to Barstool Banter. I'm sitting down with Jeff Smith from Loaded Dice Brewery in Troy, Michigan. Jeff, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me on the podcast.
Hey, no problem. My pleasure.
So can you tell me, what is your role there at the brewery?
So I own the brewery I jokingly say my wife owns it and I just do all the dirty work. But my wife and I own Loaded Dice Brewery. I do everything like a typical owner does. I don't brew anymore, but I'm involved with the brewing process, the creative process, what we're brewing and the tap list coming up. I just got my hands out of it. I found that because I was trying to do everything, I was taking shortcuts and everything. And I'm not a professionally trained brewer, so we were at the point where we needed to take a leap and hire a new brewer, so we did. And I actually feel like I'm busier now than I was when I was brewing as well.
Okay. How long has Loaded Dice been open?
We just celebrated our 4th year in September. We opened up during COVID, so that was fun. We opened and we closed, and we opened and we closed, and we opened and we closed. So it was pretty unique situation when we opened.
Certainly. Well, and your story is not unlike a lot of other breweries who either opened during or even opened slightly before and had to struggle through that. So congrats on 4 years. That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
So as I was mentioning, I happened to be at the Stumblebum Beer Company this week, and Steck, who's one of the bartenders there, he had a lot of great things to say about you and about Loaded Dice. So how did your personal ale trail journey take you to Troy, Michigan?
So I grew up in St. Clair Shores, which is outside of Troy on the east side, about 25 minutes. I moved out to California. I've always been, the guy that was drinking Sierra Nevada when all my friends are drinking Bud Light. I always thought, sought out different beers. When I moved to California, that really started coming to fruition. I didn't know anybody, and the people I worked with, they did 3 things. They brewed, they barbecued, and they played poker. And I happen to like all those things. So that's kind of how it really started to kick in. We chipped in and bought a decent brew system, and we would go over somebody's house each weekend. We either barbecue, play poker, brew, or all the once. My wife and I moved back. It never really was a thought to open up a brewery, but as I started getting more and more involved with the community, it became like something I really wanted to do. There's a point where it was very clear to me that is what I wanted to do. My sister lives up in Michigan, so up north a little bit. At the time she had a small house, and we would do what we called Funko weekend. So it was myself, my brother-in-law. We would go up there with my six nephews that were all within 2 years of each other, and just have kind of a guys weekend. Shoot
Okay.
guns, drink beer, play cards, and we stumbled upon this small little brewery that's in a barn. It's called Starving Artists. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And we were in there, I met Andy, the owner, who's outstanding, one of my favorite people in the industry. And one by one, my nephews just turned to me and were just like, why aren't you doing this?
Mm.
So that led me to contact Andy, kind of hear his story. Because, in my head, a brewery, oh, it's, multi-millions of dollars. I'm never going to have that money. And he laid out his plan to me and how he did it. And we, scratched and clawed, did a couple Kickstarter campaigns, got some seed money from a couple close friends, and 4 years later, here we are. So,
Okay. Awesome. So I had the pleasure of dropping into the brewery recently. Can you tell me how large a space you have there at Loaded Dice?
we're just under 2,000 square feet. We have seating capacity for 42, so we're pretty small. We run a two-barrel system. We've increased capacity. When I first opened, it was a one-barrel system, and I had three one-barrel tanks. So I was brewing every day.
I was just going to say like 24/7, man. That would be awful.
Yeah, yeah, right. It kind of was. But, it's one of those things like, when you have the opportunity and the money to do it, you just keep growing. So, I mean, almost immediately, I knew I was going to have to do some expansion on the brew house. So we have a 2.5 barrel system. We have four 2.5 barrel fermenters, one 5 barrel fermenters. And yeah, we still brew probably 2 to 3 times a week just to keep up. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been challenging, but it's kind of what you do as a business person. You need the kind of the tough puzzles to put together and figure out.
Right. So is it basically a custom system then?
It's basically a big home brewing system.
Okay.
It's not custom. I didn't have anybody custom fab anything for me. A small manufacturer in Grand Ledge called Psycho Brew.
Oh, yeah.
They built these for me, but they're pretty much in stock type things. But all the kettles and everything they manufactured for me.
After I checked out your website, noticed that everything about the brewery is related to casinos. How did you choose that as your theme?
Well, a couple different stories. I play craps or I play poker to feed my craps addiction. I used to play pretty regularly in California. Like to say I was kind of semi-pro, but didn't really go into like the big games. I played in the World Series of poker, and ultimately I just turned around whatever money I won, put it on the craps table. But my wife would take the green chips out, put it in her pocket so she had money to spend. And the other part of the story is like growing up in Michigan, there's not really not much to do but bowl. So I come from a family of bowlers, and gambling goes kind of hand in hand with that. And my dad owned a couple of racehorses in his time too. So I grew up at Hazel Park and DRC, the bowling alleys. So it's just something that's always in me. And when we decided to go down the path of like creating a brewery and creating the concept, I just knew it was going to be something around gambling. I think it has, from a branding aspect, unlimited reach and touch, and especially, maybe I was a little bit ahead of my time because, in 2018 and 19, when we started thinking really heavy about it, sports book gambling on your phone was just kind of a maybe, now it's so everybody bets. It kind of worked in that regard. It's like it's fitting in with what people like to do. So we were just feeding off it from there.
Cool. One of my good friends, Daryl, he went to GABF for the first time, and I believe he actually talked with you a little bit out
Yeah,
there.
that
He
was
said,
insane.
was that your first time going?
First time going participant or brewer.
Okay.
It's nuts.
I've heard it's a lot of fun. It's on my bucket list.
Yeah, do it.
But apparently, one of your beers you had there was called Death of the Fat King, and that was apparently hugely popular. He said the lines for drinking that were pretty long. Can you tell me about that beer?
So it's one of the few recipes that stems from my home brewing days. So when I was a home brewer, I'd make this beer called the Fat King, which was a Wiesenbach, a dark wheat wine, lots of notes of like banana estery things. So it's kicking around ideas. I'm like, all right, if we're gonna go for a gambling themed brewery, Vegas, Elvis, what is Elvis like? Peanut butter and banana bacon sandwiches. Why not make that? Very home brewer thing to do, right?
Right.
So I started doing that, entered it in some, homebrew competitions, got some hype, got some awards, and it was one of the ones I wanted to do once I opened. So it's just going to be the one beer twice a year on his anniversary of his death and birth. Well, second time around, I added the birth of the Fat King. So now we had two V's in box. One was like around 6%, one was 8%. And then the next year, I'm like, what else can I do? Because you got to keep bringing the bar up. We did the Death of the Fat King, which is a wheat wine. So it's a progression. You go from like something that's, you can have a few, one that's got a little bit more oomph to it. And then the wheat wine is 10%. And it's a little bit more over the top, more banana, because the yeast doesn't produce that flavor. So you actually have to add banana puree, more peanut butter, more bacon. And as we've kind of evolved the recipes, we don't really add actual bacon into it anymore. We use smoke malt to kind of emulate it. And it's a couple different smoke malts to kind of get that charred, crispy bacon kind of feel. Reasons, we were noticing, as we're bringing it out on tap, the head retention dies. And we do some other, like when we release it in the tap room, I'll have bacon crumbles that I'll put on there. Like I'll rim the glass for people. The other thing we do, we smoke like a little smoke cocktail ring. We have that. We'll do that. But last year we added one more because again, why wouldn't you do these things? Called the Resurrection of the Fat King, which is a pastry stout. Same kind of thing, same flavor profile, different mouthfeel, different beer altogether. And that's about 12%. And then we've been barrel aging the Death and the Resurrection each time. So those come out in the January release because we do a really small barrel. There's a distillery nearby that does 15 and 30 gallon barrels. So they don't need much time to really get that good bourbon flavor into it. So August until January, what's that about? Almost 5 months, almost enough time to really get that flavor.
Sounds pretty amazing. I'm a,
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of peanut butter to begin with, and growing up, you have the peanut butter banana sandwiches, and you're like, oh
right.
yeah, this is what Elvis had, and yeah, I get that.
The August one, we do, a pretty sizable event. We get food trucks in here pretty regularly. I find a food truck that, I really like and we'll do a play on it. Like we had a hamburger truck the last 2 years and they do a peanut butter, banana, bacon cheeseburger. A couple years before, some guy it was a barbecue truck and he knows I like pork belly. So he did a pork belly slider with peanut butter on it. I mean, it's fun, right? I mean,
Sure, lean into that. Yeah,
yeah, don't take it too seriously. I mean, I'll let, the German purists do that.
to hell with my
Yeah.
Heinz Caboot.
Yeah. No. I mean, this is a place, a local pub. I mean, it should be fun. I want to create a fun atmosphere.
I'm gonna have to get that on my radar here. Just make a quick note. But August and Jan, huh?
Yep. Birthday is on the 18th, and his death, I think, is like around the 14th or 15th of January.
Okay. I'll follow the socials and that'll keep track of that. I really didn't have Loaded Dice on my radar. Again, we talked about COVID. Really haven't traveled much for business since 2020. Right. So this last week, it was the first time in a while that I was actually in the Detroit area.
You've been here, so you know the place is somewhat difficult to find. It's in a strip mall that doesn't face the freeway or a main street. It's just perpendicular with the street. So when we opened, we chose the spot because of those reasons, because it was just going to be, my wife Jennifer and I running the show and never owning a business and never brewing commercially. I didn't want to take a risk to do those things. So
yeah, let's face it, it is a pretty risky venture to start
right.
any kind of business that's related to service. It's a challenge for sure. What makes Loaded Dice unique to the craft beer scene? And even Detroit specifically, I mean, because I think that is a unique area to be a part of the brew scene.
Yeah, I mean, well, originally it was because we were rotating beers so rapidly. And it was basically my playground for anything I wanted to do. And again, leaning on my tech background, like there's a metaphor, fail fast. So if you're going to make a mistake, do it quickly, learn from it, and move on. So when we were such a small batch, a beer would be on tap for 2 weeks. And that taught me a ton. And now we're really trying to dial in, those classical style beers. Like Eric is proud of how he brews his lagers. And for us, like, I think what sets us apart is like people come in and they know they're going to have a good time. We do silly things, but we're not goofy. I mean, it's just, I want to create an environment that, like, I mean, any given day, there's, 20, 30 people in here and they all know each other and they come here for that. It's not a transient place where we get new people coming in. I mean, we do that, don't get me wrong, but it's usually a handful of regulars that just hang out and they just like coming here. I don't have a large staff, and the staff kind of grew up with my regulars, and everybody knows everybody's name, kind of place.
Right.
But and I don't know if that sets us apart, but it's just like tonight we're doing the goth night and we're giving away just like a silly gothic mug just because we want to do things like this. Tomorrow we're doing a saran wrap ball with a bunch of gothic little prizes in it. You pay a little bit of money and you get a chance to win bigger things, and then part of all that money goes into the charity fund. We just want to make sure everybody's involved, and we're not going to be a place that's just going to give you a beer and turn around and go back and watch the TV. I want to create an immersive, interactive experience as much as possible.
Sure. I grew up in the Midwest, and I really feel like, comparatively speaking to different regions that I've gone and enjoyed beer, the environment in Michigan is certainly a really nice one as far as going into a brewery. There's very few times that I go into a brewery, sit down at the bar, somebody plops a beer down and turns around and walks away. There's always some interaction, even amongst the people you're sitting next to at the bar as well.
Yeah.
I just think that's really indicative of kind of the Midwestern culture, so to speak.
Yeah.
We just really like to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's like when I lived in California and I look back at like the friends I made, they all had Midwest roots.
One of the other things I noticed on your website was that you call yourself an open source brewery. What does that mean?
So that means less than what it did when I first opened. So when I was brewing, I would post all my recipes up on kind of a community site called Brewer's Friend, where everybody can kind of go and get the recipes and not only brew it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that hard of a thing to do. Like to make a beer isn't challenging. It's how you market it, how you package it, making sure it's as fresh as possible. Those are the challenges.
Right.
Coming up with a recipe isn't that hard. I mean, I can Google search anything, a Kolsch recipe, bring up like whatever the best Kolsch recipe is in the world. That's how I'm going to make. So when I was saying open source, like it was anybody could come and get my recipes. Everybody's going to know what it is we're doing, what steps we're taking throughout our whole process of opening and things like that. Since I heard Eric, we kind of wavered off that a little bit. I'm still pretty transparent. I'll talk your ear off about our future plans and what I want to do in the next week and what I want to do in the next 5 years. But it's not as much as I thought it would be, because I just think like with the communities of homebrewers and like there wasn't really much to leverage there. But I do like the phrase open source brewery. And honestly, I'm lacking in updating my website to a little bit different marketing campaign.
Does the open source kind of play into, you've mentioned come from the tech industry. Do you still work in the tech industry as your real job?
Yeah, my real job. Yeah, I'm a user experience designer and researcher. So I design public safety software. So law enforcement, fire personnel, dispatch centers for a global software company.
Okay.
There's a lot of police officers, a lot of firemen that come in and out of this place. So I have great test subjects to talk to about stuff. And my domain space of expertise is mobile applications, how they use it, how they do it, what do they expect, any improvements that, I just, hey, look at my phone. Can you do a quick little survey for me? But yeah, but the open source came from that. I dabble, not as much as I used to. I used to be, I started out as a developer, so programming, but we're the same age. So the internet is when I started. Once the internet happened, that gave me the opportunity to move out to California. I got sick of learning or relearning programming languages every 6 months. So I slid more into doing a little bit more design work, which I excelled in. And it kind of feeds off of like my creativity a little bit more anyways. So
I know another thing that I saw on your website was something called the futures bet. Right. Is that something you're still doing?
Yeah. So it changes year to year a little bit. So the concept is like when you place like lines to win the Super Bowl, that's a futures bet. So what we did with the barrel age program is kind of the same concept. We'll release the bets as they will be called, on Black Friday. So people buy it on Black Friday, and then we roll it out, in the future after we figure out what we're brewing and what we have. So this year we did two releases. We did one in July, and then we're doing one the Saturday before Black Friday. Just because it's how the beers landed. You're going to get guaranteed somewhere between 7 to 9 bottles. And then the day of each pick, we do a draft. So if you bought the first one, you don't necessarily get the first pick. We put everybody's numbers in there and we pull them out. And then it kind of gamifies it a little bit. Every other year I give poker chips out with the purchase. So you can use that every other year to like swap with somebody. Like you have to demand a trade because you only really have the opportunity to get two-ish of each one. If it's one that you really like, you could say, okay, Don, you got to give me that one beer with this chip. Or you can use the chip to move up a spot in the draft. It's just something silly that, and it grows each time. I think the first year was our biggest year, and that was a little bit of a cluster. Not to say I didn't know what I was doing, but looking back on it, I didn't know what I was doing. We had probably 100 of these bets bought, and we did it all in one day. And this tap room isn't conducive to having 100 people in here, so it was a mess. We kind of tethered it back and did two releases. We upped the price a little bit, but you're getting bigger bottles. Works out to be about, with the pre-buy, about $12 a bottle, and there's the 16.9 bottles. So it's not a bad deal. I mean, you could buy comparable barrel aged beers for 3 times as much. And we sell them in the tap room like after, because we cellar some for every year. We'll bring them out and like do a vintage sale. But we also put them out for sale for people who missed it or who just don't want to have 7 to 9 bottles of barrel aged beers.
That's cool.
Yep.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. This episode, I'm drinking Safety Glasses Pils from Industrial Arts Brewing in Beacon, New York. From the brewer, IABC is proud to introduce you to our new lineup of Safety Glasses non-alcoholic brews. Joining its IPA sibling, the Near Beer Pils is here. This brew is maltier, with a hint of hops that satisfies that lager craving. Without further delay, well, I think that is pretty ironic. As soon as I popped the top on the beer, it flooded over out of the can. It seemed like it was a little bit overfilled, and I should have thought about that before I opened it. I've made a nice mess at my workstation. I've just finished cleaning it up, and now we'll continue on. So every spring and fall, I take a beer break to rebalance my health heading into the holidays or summertime. This beer is a new one to me, coming from New York State. So I poured it out into a proper Pilsner glass. It pours a very clear and clean, light straw color. It has a nice fluffy white head. It's exactly what I would expect from a Pilsner. So on the nose, I definitely get that kind of crackery, bready kind of aroma. Maybe a little bit of a hint of citrus on there as well. It certainly reminds me of what a real beer Pilsner would be. First up impression, it has a crisp hop bite right off the front. Just a little bit of a malty flavor to it. But I really like that hop profile that's in there. Certainly getting a good citrusy bite. So I know we're not really in summer anymore, but if you're looking for some sort of a nice light Pilsner that's non-alcoholic, that maybe you want to tailgate with the football game, or maybe just sit around drinking with your friends around the fire, this would be a good option. So if you're out in New York State and can find this, I would certainly recommend it. So overall, I'm going to give this one 3.5 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. Cheers, Industrial Arts. I'm always looking for new craft beverages to review. So if you have one from your local favorite craft brewery meadery, or cidery you'd like me to drink and describe, reach out and let me know. That's all for this episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time as I promise to start digging into my first yeast strain, pitch the yeast in my homebrew project, finish my interview with Jeff from Loaded Dice Brewery, and review another beer. Remember to hit the subscribe button on your preferred podcast platform to be notified of new episodes. Follow me on Instagram as well, 5beerplan2022, to see what is happening on my personal ale trail. I'd love to hear from you, and there are several ways you may do so. Leave a comment for this episode on Spotify, direct message me on Instagram, or email me directly, 5beerplan@frontier.com. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friends.